morning, let's get right into it. We got state reps this morning, and he goofed up with the time, so he's got to get going. So we're going to let him talk first about auto insurance. Big deal. It's about money. We can save some money here. So, Mr. Sheppard, take the mic, my friend.
All right. I did screw up on the time. So
He did. That's all right.
And this stool is just in the way at this point, so you might have to stand. Auto insurance. So on Thursday afternoon, what we did, we dropped a bill that would eliminate completely the no-fault system and go to a tort system. And if you look at what Ohio does, that's exactly what this bill would do. We actually modeled it after Ohio's law. And that way, we can get back to what most of the states in the country do. There's only 18 states currently that have no-fault insurance. Florida, who still has it, their House voted to get rid of it. They've done all sorts of changes and caps and moves and just never worked. Colorado, they eliminated theirs as well. So the trend isn't moving towards to match what Michigan is doing. The trend is moving to get away from no-fault system and actually have it be a tort at fault state.
Jason, what was your, when they first came out with no fault, what was their intention when they originally did that years back?
So it was done in 1977, 78. So I was born in 78, so I don't remember when it happened.
You look much older than that.
I know. You know what it is? It's maturity.
Some
Some people in this room may not have that. So to throw that out there, so it was done originally to get attorneys, to get courts out of the auto insurance business. And when it started, it was fine. But what has occurred, as you see, if you drive up and down the expressways, you see these big billboards that say, what? Call us for auto accident. Also, the courts get clogged down because hospitals are suing insurance providers to get paid, and it's just becoming something that it wasn't intended to become. And we've seen that continue. And with an unlimited benefit like we have, there's no way to control costs. So your PIP's high. With collision, what's interesting about collision is everybody talks about, why don't we just lower our collision coverage or our cost? Well, you can't. In a no-fault system, your truck or car is your problem. So if you get into an auto accident, no matter whose fault, you still have to fix your own vehicle. And in that fault state, there's some risk there, obviously, where if it was your fault, your insurance company pays and reimburses the other. So they can actually actuarially lower your rate. So,
can you bring something up? I know we were at one of your meetings, which was very informative, where they were talking how...
All my meetings are very informative, so before you start down that path...
We're going to have that other state rep on next week.
The ghost state rep?
Exactly. I think you made some really good points when you talked about like the attorneys that in the hospitals are going after the insurance companies, and they have their own x-ray facilities. And can you get into that a little bit, how that is all worked?
So basically what the system has created is where there's attorneys' offices that have their own x-ray machines, or they're doing some of their own type of diagnosis on patients, so to speak. And it even goes beyond that. So it's kind of an interesting system. So you get into an auto accident, and the hospital has to code your injuries, right? So let's say you come in, they code your injuries, the bill goes to Blue Cross, if you have Blue Cross insurance. Blue Cross then sees that it was an auto accident. So they go back to the hospital, deny the payment. It has to go to their auto insurance. So the auto insurance then has to figure this out. Well, the bill changes at that point. So Blue Cross has a fee schedule that says, this procedure costs this much. Auto insurance does not have that. So once they find out there's an auto accident, the Blue Cross side of things is a lower rate than what the hospital would get in an auto accident. So
let me interrupt you for one quick second.
Yeah.
And just so anybody knows at home, I know there's like one or two on Michelle's Facebook Live, but there's like 25 on our Facebook Live, Al. If you have any questions, just ask and I'll check it frequently.
Is that why you keep walking around?
That's why I keep going back and forth, walking around. But go ahead. Sorry to interrupt
you. Nervous. I was on a roll.
I know.
And look what you did.
You look nice this morning, by the way.
Thank you. I usually do. So, having said all of that, what happens is that the hospital can charge a different rate for auto, for even the same procedures. So a bill will go to the auto insurance provider. The auto insurance takes that bill and thinks it's too high. They don't pay it. Or they pay a percentage of it. Then the hospital system sues the auto insurer, and things get bogged down in court. Same thing with long-term care facilities. All that comes into play there. So we've created this kind of system without any fraud authority or any real oversight as to how the process should work. So we attempted to do a fraud authority this past year. We attempted to do some changes this past year. and went up on the board and failed because some of my colleagues, they follow not so much what the constituents want, but what either big hospitals, CPAN, other insurance, whatever. So that's where we always run into these battles.
What would happen, I know for example, like right now that there's a lifetime medical clause in there, what would happen underneath this bill, or how would those people be protected if say I was paralyzed and needed medical care?
So two things. One, the current people in the system, so our current group that's in there, the MCCA still has to exist for a period of time. So if this bill became law today, it wouldn't come into effect for 1 year. So from that point, a year forward, anybody else that gets into the system, which as a side note is only about 1 to 2% of auto accidents ever reach MCCA. So we're talking a very small percentage of auto accidents, which is the highest cost of most of the auto accidents. Your average hospital injury in an automobile accident is about $50,000 or less. And it's very rare you get to the $575,000 cap, and very rare, beyond that. So what happens is that those group will remain in the MCCA. There's money in that fund. You would see on your insurance bills about a $20, $25 maintenance fee for the MCCA, because that's by statute. Eventually, as the last patient comes off of the MCCA, the catastrophic fund, then that fund would close. Any leftover money would go back to the ratepayers on a percentage basis. If you are in an auto accident in a tort system, there's a lot of things that come into play. So if it's not your fault, obviously you were hit and severely injured. Your insurance company goes after the driver's insurance company that hit you. And then the lawsuits come together. And there's certain parameters about, how much is payout, how much for hospitalization. If you look at other states that have this, sometimes their payouts that they get through the court system is higher than what the total lifetime payout is even in Michigan. If it is your fault, you fall back on your own insurance, whatever level you've picked. So that's one thing we have to also keep in mind. In Michigan, we have about half of the providers that other states do in insurance. You think there's a lot of options, there really isn't. It's about half of what we could have here. Because you cannot make your insurance work here in a no-fault state, because with unlimited, it's too expensive. That's why when you go buy insurance, they always want you to buy your home. They always want you to buy some sort of life. They always want you to be part of some other plan, because the auto side of things is very expensive for them to insure. So under an at-fault system, you'd see more competition in the market. You'd see more options in the market. You'd see different plans that you could pick, where right now we're kind of locked in.
Would that drop our rates?
It'd drop our rates in about half.
That's
So,
pretty significant.
and obviously if you're a terrible driver, your rates would fluctuate because of that. But in our current system, good drivers get punished as they get older because they fall into different rate classes. The senior population is probably the hardest hit under no-fault insurance, because the risk is much higher if you're above a certain age of getting into an accident. So that's how they put you, even though you may never have been in one, right?
So Mr. Sheppard, you did get a question. What is the average amount a homeowner can expect to save if this bill passes?
I would say if your driving record is good and you don't have just a litany of problems, I could say easily half. It'd be half the cost.
That's quite a bit. Well, that would actually spur the economy a little bit too. I mean, people could afford a little bit more money for a car payment, spend some money.
Well, just think if you're spending $300 or $400 a month on cars, right? If you have 2 or 3 cars, you can easily get to that amount. Think if it was $150 a month or $200 a month, and you're freeing up another $200. That could be $2,000 a year.
Yes.
So you would save a couple $1,000 depending on your situation. So it's actually the biggest savings compared to anything else we've attempted. And the reason for that is because it's a different risk pool. If I was an auto insurer and I had 10,000 automobiles, you figure a percentage of that 10,000 will get into an auto accident. And then a percentage of that will be at fault and the other won't. So they can adjust their risk that way. So they're not insuring all 10,000 vehicles to have to pay out if every one of them were in an accident. See what I mean? Right. Where now they can play the risk pool a little bit. And obviously, you've seen the TV ads where it says, you get good driver discounts and all that stuff. Right. You don't get that in a no-fault system because it's hard to discount even if you are a good driver. And if you do get into an accident in a no-fault system, your rates go up much higher than they do in an at-fault state.
I know Michelle would be happy because I know she's in that 80+ range on her car insurance, so this would probably help her out, wouldn't it, Jason?
It should. I mean, I know she pays like $6,000 a year for one vehicle just because of her poor driving record, but beyond that,
I know, it's like we always tell her to give us a call before she's on the road.
Yeah,
just to be safe.
Yeah. And she's like a mile from here. So what's amazing about it is in that mile stretch is always a problem.
Exactly.
It's crazy, isn't it?
So I appreciate all the information. So we're going to go to break here in about 2 minutes. So if you want to talk a little bit more about this subject, and we'll switch subjects the next 15-minute segment, we'll get into maybe medical marijuana. But go ahead and you're pretty good at talking off the hip, so go ahead and just talk for another minute or so. And
so I have 1 minute.
Yeah, 1 minute.
All we're hoping for with this bill package is we get it in committee, we do a good committee process, and hopefully get the votes out of committee to get it on the House floor. At that point, we'll be working. I have meetings the next few weeks with my colleagues about it. A lot of questions, a lot of press. This is something that nobody's attempted to go back to the system from the 70s. So a bill like this has not been dropped since that time. So this is something where we're getting to that point. And even the staunch people that are against change and no fault are starting to look at this a little bit because it might be the only option.
Well, I know one thing, Jason, I've read too, is that this has also hampered Detroit of getting people to move back into the city because their insurance rates are astronomical.
Well, and us in Bedford Township, let's just be honest. If somebody comes here and looks at a house in Bedford or compares it to Ohio, their taxes and their property might be a little bit higher. But that offsets itself if you're paying double.
Right, and we hear that from people. You hear that, it's like, oh, we're paying a lot less. And especially when you get teenage drivers. I know at one time, because I had 2 daughters, and I think they accumulated every ticket you could get. I was paying $700 a month in car insurance.
Right. Yeah, I believe it. What, are we going to break now?
If you want.
Yeah, you guys are making faces.
Brett, we need a break. We need a break.
No, I was pointing at the teenager here for bad driving.
Yeah, bad driving Brett. Whoa. Wow. What are you costing your dad? Huh?
He probably hasn't registered in Ohio.
Yeah, Brett. I know, he probably does. Brett, get a job. You need to get a job.
He's got one, that's why he's here.
Make America Great Again hat. That means you got a job.
He's sponsor for the show so he covers auto insurance.